I'm Sam from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is Graded for Friday Night SmackDown, where I take a look at the show segment by segment and award each little bit a grade from A+ to F. We are firmly on the road to WWE Fastlane, and this week contains a hell of a lot of setup. So without any further ado, let's crack on with it. Hit the intro. And out comes Edge to kick off this week's episode, and he says, you know what? Roman got what he wanted. He got the Mania match, but then he seemed to get distracted, and he took a little trip down Bryan Boulevard. And he says on the point of Bryan, he seems to think that he deserves the Mania spot more than Edge does. And Edge is like, let me just remind you, at one point I was working 7 days a week against guys like Undertaker, Batista, Orton, Eddie Guerrero, Terry Funk. I've been through that. And then out comes Bryan, and he's like, look, Edge, I've got an infinite amount of respect for you, but me challenging Roman, it really had nothing to do with you. He says he can't head into what could potentially be his last ever WrestleMania on the back burner. This wasn't so much about Edge, it was about just Bryan getting that spot. Edge then shoots him down. He says, you know what, Bryan, Roman beat you pretty definitively, and you're a lot better than this, but you're not better than me. I'm gonna give this one an A. If you ever needed a reminder, since he's come back, if you needed a reminder as to why Edge is one of the all-time greats, this was it. We had an impassioned promo from both men here that just kept our storyline bubbling. It's a weird little thing that's been thrown together here, and it's quite curious. And now, after that, it feels like maybe I'm not so sure about what's going to happen at Mania. But then we go to our first match of the evening, which is the Street Profits and the Mysterios versus Alpha Academy and the Dirty Dogs. The faces get jumped on their entrance, and the match starts off proper after the break with Dawkins and Rude. The pace is strong, with Dawkins getting the better of Rude and Gable. The faces then cycle on Rude for a little bit before Dom gets trapped and worked over hard by the heels. Dawkins gets the hot tag and takes it to Ziggler, but then when he tags in Ford for the splash, Rude pops up on the apron, pushes him off the top to the outside. Ford properly crawls out of the heel corner back to his feet, with Ziggler just putting his entire weight on his back like a big, meaty, heavy, blonde backpack. But yeah, he's crawling across the ring, just crawling, makes the tag to Dawkins, but the referee was distracted when the tag was made, turns around, he's like, whoa, get back out of the ring, and Ford is back to square one. Ray gets in, goes for a 619, but walks straight into a Rude spine buster. Things break down a little bit here, with Rude then walking into a double 619, then Ford gets tagged in, hits the splash, and picks up the win. I'm gonna give this one a B. I usually worry when it gets to 8-man tag matches because they can feel a little bit cluttered, but this one was done pretty well. There was some good drama, some good exchanges, and I liked the build to the finish. It's also the closest that the Profits have been to Rude and Ziggler since all of that sort of kicked off and started, so I expect this to continue in the coming weeks. We then go to Jey Uso backstage, who's approaching Roman's dressing room, and Paul Heyman's there, and he kind of tells Jey to maybe go away and come back in a little bit. Roman isn't best pleased after what happened last week, and it's probably for the best that Jey doesn't go in there right now. We then go to an interview with Seth Rollins backstage, and Kayla once again asks him about Cesaro, and Seth's like, I just wanted to help him, and he disrespected me, and after everything he's done to me, you know what, I'm done with him, I'm completely done with him. Kayla then reveals to him that Murphy will be challenging Cesaro again this week, and Rollins' entire demeanor changes here. He goes, rematch? And he sort of smiles to himself and walks off. And now it's time for the on-location promo. Oh my god. This is one of the things I've missed the most about wrestling from when I was younger. There is not enough of this stuff done. I mean, one of my favorite wrestling moments of all time is the brawl in the supermarket. Does this stack up next to that? Of course not, but it's still good. Well, it's good in like a really, really cheesy way, but it's right up my street. So Shayna and Nia, or rather Nia and dragging Shayna along with them, Nia is taking Reggie shopping. We're in what appears to be a gentleman's boutique, and she's like, Reggie, you've been through so much. Look around, you can have anything you want. And then cue a horrible, cheesy, awful 80s movie style dress up montage where he's just changing outfits and Nia's like, that's good, that's great. And he's like popping his collar and doing like a little spin and everything. It's so cheesy. Eventually Reggie comes and sits on Nia's lap and he's like, you've been so good to me here, what can I do to repay you? And then Nia just sort of smiles as we get a cross dissolve, a gentle, soft cross dissolve, back over to Cole and Graves looking confused on commentary, and a sexy oboe is just playing a little tune. Now, I'm not going to give it a grade, but if I was to give it a grade, just purely out of my own head, it would be an A+. Don't even tweet me. It was put, this is what wrestling's all about, of course. Next up, we go to Cesaro versus Murphy. And just as they're about to lock up and start, Seth Rollins comes out and sits on the ramp on a steel chair. Murphy's aggression is great here, but Cesaro boots him to the apron. And when Cesaro follows him to the outside, Murphy once again brings it and delivers a high knee. Back in the ring, though, Cesaro manages to hit a superplex before going for uppercut after uppercut. Murphy goes to come off the top rope, looks like he's got Cesaro's number. Cesaro catches him into the swing, starts going for it, and then Seth Rollins storms the ring and attacks Cesaro. He hits him with 2 stomps, and then he grabs a chair, locks it round his head, lines up for the third and final stomp, which would probably break Cesaro's neck, and then Jamie Noble and a load of referees storm the ring and put a stop to it. And as Rollins is leaving, he heads up to the back through the curtain, and who does he bump into? Shinsuke Nakamura. There's an awkward stare down. Nakamura obviously very upset about what Rollins has just done to his former tag partner. Oh, this match is gonna be... So, yes, this gets a B-. The match here wasn't the important thing. And it's a bit crap for Murphy that it all sort of went by the wayside, but it's fine. Murphy will be able to recover. What's important here is that Rollins is going to have to answer for going too far, and he's going to have to answer to Cesaro's former tag partner. This match is surely going to be great, and it's going to be a stop on the way to Cesaro versus Rollins at Mania, surely. And I'm slightly concerned that we may be getting Murphy back with Rollins again, especially after that Instagram comment that Murphy had left this week, but I don't know. We're just gonna have to see how it goes. We then go backstage to Kevin Owens, who's walking along looking at his cards for the KO show, just making sure he's got everything in order, and he's stopped by Sami Zayn, who's like, Kevin, look, you know, we've had some disagreements, but, you know, we're old friends, aren't we, you and me? And I'd really like for you to be in this documentary. We're going to expose everything. We're going to put a stop to all of the bad things that are happening in this company. And Owen's just like, yeah, man, no, that sounds really cool, but I've got to go prep for the KO show. And Sammy pleads with him. He's just begging him. He's like, come on, please, just be a part of it. Just think about it. And Owen's just like, okay, well, just... I'll think about it. And then we go to Jey Uso backstage, and he's stopped by Edge, and there's a tense little moment, and Edge is like, look, no, I just want to talk to you man to man. He asks Jey what he's doing. He says, I don't understand what you've become, and I don't think you realize that it was an Usos match from 2015 that made me realize, well, maybe I can do this again. Maybe I can come back to the WWE. He asks what his dad thinks about him being Roman's lapdog, and then Jey's mask momentarily slips before the guard comes straight back up, and he goes back to his usual spiel of my family's in charge and all that stuff. You know, we've got to do what we've got to do. And Edge just kind of looks at him, and then they part ways. Oh, I think before Edge walks off as well, he's like, well, I tried. And now it's time for the KO show, and Kevin welcomes his guests this week, Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. He mentions a possibility of them maybe being tag champions when they go into Mania to face each other, but he says there's a lot going on around you guys at the minute, and he brings up Reggie. Sasha's like, look, I can't help if Reggie's got a crush on me, and then Belair jumps in and she's like, look, I'm sick of this. I'm absolutely sick of this. She says he's going to be a problem. There was no need for her to have slammed the door in his face. She just has to tell him to go away and he'll not bother their matches anymore. Sasha then runs Belair down a little bit, and then Belair has to remind Sasha, just real quick, hang on, I was the one that picked you, not the other way around. And then out come Nia and Shayna with Big Reg, and they're followed immediately by Natty and Tamina. And that takes us on to our next match, which is Tamina and Natty versus Belair and Sasha, and we've got Nia, Shayna and Reggie at ringside. Both teams have a nice opening exchange here. Sasha gets trapped in the corner, but then Belair gets the hot tag and takes it straight to Natty. Reggie, however, jumps up on the apron to distract the ref from counting a pin, and this is where things start to fall apart. So the match is just going on as it would. Tamina gets in, but then at ringside, Reggie and Sasha get into it a little bit, and Reggie runs away from Sasha, but of course he runs through the ring. Sasha gets into the ring, and this leads to a lot of confusion. Reggie escapes, Natty floors Sasha, and then Tamina real quick just rolls up Belair. 1, 2, 3. Tamina pinned Bianca Belair. Ross is going to absolutely lose his mind. You do not want to miss WTF moments later today. Christ. Post-Bell, Belair and Sasha argue about Reggie a little bit, and this match gets a C+. It was a mess of a match, but it had to be for the story, I guess. We've got that whole thing going on with Reggie, and a core point of that is that matches keep getting ruined. It's sort of almost skirting on the Billie Kay situation. But the one thing I will take away from this as a massive positive is the fact that Natty and Tamina look aggressive. They're working well as a unit, and finally, these two pillars of the women's division who for so long have been, you know, holding it up without any real real featured time themselves, it looks like they're actually getting some time to shine, and that's a nice thing. It's a good thing. Afterwards, backstage, we have a little bit more back and forth with Sasha and Belair arguing about Reggie, and Sasha blames Belair for losing the match. Next up, we have the return of Big E, and he comes out, he's got a neck brace on, he's got a crutch, he's stood there just sort of limping forward, and then he tears it all off and storms his way down to the ring, and he's got a problem with Apollo Crews. So he goes off on Apollo. He says, I hope you know what you've done. Like, you have to answer for your actions now. You've opened Pandora's box and there's no closing the lid. He says there's no sorry that can fix this, and there's going to be no more waiting. Get out here right now. And there is stone silence. Nothing. He just sort of looks, laughs, and he goes, okay, well, I'm going to defend the belt anyway, so here's an open challenge. Anybody, come on, let's have a match for the IC title. Out comes King Corbin. Corbin's like, you know what, not dressed to wrestle, but I can tear off this $10,000 suit and I can get this $30,000 timepiece scratched up a little. Sami Zayn's music hits. Sami runs down. He's like, I accept. There's a little bit more back and forth with those two arguing. E eventually says, whoever gets in the ring first, you get the match. Sami dives in, and yeah, here we go. Sami Zayn versus Big E. So Big E looks real strong here. He takes charge, but Sami is able to, of course, outwit him, outspeed him a little bit and just lay in some strikes. He, however, runs straight into some throws and then rolls to the floor to try and escape. E drags him back to the apron, puts him in place, goes for the splash, but as he's doing it, he looks up the ramp and he's screaming Apollo's name. As he goes down for the splash, Sami moves out the way and we go to break. When we come back, Sami hits a sunset bomb. It's not enough, and then he starts slapping E and getting in his face. E powers up though, hits the big ending. 1, 2, 3. Cruisertron then almost immediately hits and he jumps E from behind. He beats him down and then he goes outside and he gets the steps. He charges E with the steps, sends him to the floor, and E is an absolute wreck. I'm going to give this one an A-. The intensity here from E was unlike anything we have seen before from him. It was amazing. The guy's an absolute treasure. We furthered his thing with Apollo. We furthered a little bit of that nice dynamic that I keep going on about with Zayn and Corbin. It was just a good little use of a segment, this. We then go to Nia and Reggie backstage, and Kayla pops up as they're talking, and Nia's like, whoa, rude. You don't just barge in on people's conversations. And then the conversation gets back to wrestling. So Nia runs down Sasha, and then Reggie's like, you know what you should do? You should challenge Sasha to a match next week, because if you take a belt, then you can go into WrestleMania as tag champion and women's champion. Nia then agrees and asks Kayla to beat it. And now it's time for our main event of the evening, which is the contract signing between Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns for their match at Fastlane. So Roman, Jay and Paul come down, Bryan comes down alone, and Adam Pearce is of course waiting in the ring with the contract in hand. Roman forces Pearce to move his seat to the head of the table, and Bryan is just sort of absorbing all of this, getting ready to use it as fuel. Roman tells Bryan that Bryan really shouldn't want this, and you know what? While he did agree to the match a couple of weeks ago, now he's just not feeling it, Bryan's like, well, I want the match anyway, so I'm just going to sign this here. And he's like, well, maybe if I beat you, I can be head of the table. Maybe I can be the one, that's on the island of relevancy. Maybe I can be the one that gets to hang out with Afa and Sika and Jay. And he's just going off. He's not letting Roman get a word in. He's just talking, making fun of all of Roman's very serious things and his family and all of that. Well, not even making fun, just being like, I could be you. And this is really silly. And Roman, out of anger, just grabs it, signs it, and puts it down. I think the thing that really pushed Roman to sign it was the fact that Bryan brought up making Jay tap. And then after he has signed it, he promises that Roman will suffer the same fate at Fastlane. Jay then explodes in anger, flips the table, throws it to the outside, and demands to be made special guest enforcer, to make sure the match is called down the middle. He's demanding it of Pearce, and then Edge's music hits. Edge comes down, mic in hand. He's like, no. You know what? Next week, we will face off against one another. Whoever wins, they get to become the special enforcer. And Pearce is like, that sounds like a great idea. A brawl then breaks out, and Edge, in the middle of all of it, shoves Bryan out of the corner. He's trying to get his shots in on Roman, and then Bryan, being offended at this, turns around, nails Edge with a running knee, and we have that little awkward moment between them in the ring as we go off the air. So this one gets a B+. I think it did everything that it needed to do. do. Bryan called Roman's cowardice into question. Edge offered a little bit of an olive branch to Bryan, in the form of helping him, have somebody on his side maybe as special guest enforcer. We have the awkward moment with Bryan laying Edge out, and then we've got a clear path to Fastlane now. It feels like everything has sort of fell nicely into place. But in terms of an overall grade for SmackDown this week, I'm going to give it a B+, as this overall grade becomes more and more redundant each time. SmackDown is just... it consistently delivers, guys. But the one thing this week did well was that it brought clouds of uncertainty to the Thunderdome. Sasha and Belair, Roman, Bryan and Edge, Roman and Jay, we've even got E and Cruz. It was certainly a very reflective week, but it was one that pushed us forward toward the things that are on the horizon. But that has been graded for Friday Night SmackDown. I've been Sam from Cultaholic Wrestling. What did you guys think of the show? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.